Part two of Through the Ringer, looking at the Durban July 2022. We did 4 races in the first part, hoping to do the next 4, including the big one in this part 2. This is the 5th race that we're going on to now, the first leg of the second jackpot. There are 3 jackpots on the day and the likely pool of 1.5 million on the tote here. And this is the Grade 2 Golden Slipper, this race for 2-year-old fillies over 1,400 meters. You've got quite a bit of form to work with here, Robert. And Maharani's done nothing wrong. She's won 4 out of 4. She's the champion 2-year-old filly from the Gauteng region in the past season. And then you've got Sweet Pepper, who's won all 3. Are these 2 the principal runners to focus in on, or is there something lurking in the wings without these 2 in the race, if you excluded those 2?
No, Nico, I mean, this does look on paper to be a 2-horse race because it's quite hard to envisage both of them failing.
Yeah.
I just think that Maharani, and it's very hard, to go against a filly that's won 4 out of 4. But I just think the initial betting as they priced up was completely wrong. They priced her up around about even money, and I just think that price is completely insane. Yes, I know she won a really good race when she beat Arga Ali, who's certainly no slouch. And then she came out and won the SA Fillies Nursery. But there was nothing in that race that really struck me as being special at all. And then she came out and she beat Intoxicating by 2 lengths. And there is a line of form because when Sweet Pepper beat Miss Daisy at her second start, Intoxicating was 4 1/4 lengths behind her. And Sweet Pepper winning the Alan Robertson and the way she won, to me, is much more appealing than Maharani. In addition to that, by Trippy out of a Gimme the Green Light mare, she runs at them and gets going late. She's going to love every bit of this 1,400-meter trip. And from a 4 draw, Maharani's going to be there to be shot at. And I really think that Sweet Pepper, with her turn of foot, will run her out of it. To me, the betting is the wrong way around. As I say, that the initial price up was even money 2 to 1. Sweet Pepper has shortened a little bit, and Maharani has drifted a bit. But I think Maharani will trade 2 to 1, at least 2 to 1 all day. And that Sweet Pepper ultimately is going to start favourite. So to me, Sweet Pepper is clearly the filly to beat. But I do obviously have respect for Maharani, who could go pillar to post.
All right. Okay, so is those 2. I see there's been quite a bit of money for a long shot here. Bevy's Delight has been back, the maiden, who ran 5th on debut. It did run against winners, but what do you make of the money for that? I say big money, but I mean, it doesn't take a lot of money, but it has shortened significantly.
Yeah, look, Bright Green could be anything. We're going to deal with that in the next race. I mean, that was an eye-popping win on debut. And has a terrible draw to contend with. And unfortunately, that race follows. It's not before. But it's going to be a tough task to take on, as a maiden, 2 fillies who've won 3 and 4 races respectively, and between them are unbeaten in 7 starts. I can't see it, sorry.
Okay. Neil, do you want to add to anything to what Robert said for that race, or can we kick on?
No, I think Robert's read it exactly right. My first choice is actually, I see it like him, Sweet Pepper over Maharani from a value perspective, no question in my mind that's the way to go. And beyond that, a huge gap. Both of them will have to flop and flop pretty badly for anything to get a blow in, including the maiden and including number 7, Amina, who would probably be my 3rd choice. Just as a side, I mean, you'd like to go to the sales with Koos and Carly, wouldn't you? I mean, he's got 2 horses. I mean, MK's Pride and Maharani, whatever he's doing. I mean, crikey, unbelievable.
Easy game for him.
Easy,
anyway.
Sure.
Okay, the Grade 2 Durban Golden Horseshoes next, the race for the 2-year-old colts. Now, this is, I think it's a lot tougher, obviously. But if we go to let's touch on Bright Green, because it was a very good debut and eye-popping win, wasn't it, Robert? But I want to speak to you not only as a tipster in this race, but also as a stakeholder of one of the horses up against Bright Green in the form of Golden Prospect, because you have bought a share of Sean Terry's runner now. after a very good first run. But what did you think? What did you make of that bright green win? I mean, it is drawn 14. Can it follow up? It surely can after that first run.
Yeah, sure. And how it can follow up with the turn of foot that it showed and the way that it won. But let's be honest, when you're racing over 1400 from a 14 draw, you're going to need your fair share of luck.
Yeah.
And Dean is not a person who likes his horses to go to the front or race handy either. So I don't see him giving instructions to Keegan to try and jump the horse and place it. They're going to be dropping this horse out and riding it for luck. So you pays your money and you takes your chances from that kind of draw. Do I think it's good enough to win? Definitely. But this is the hardest race on the card. This is impossible. This is virtually a field race for exotics, and load up as much as possible. You can make a case for any amount of horses in this race, and we could spend all day discussing this. I think that Glenn Cotson's got a particularly strong hand with Grinkov. Grinkov's got an unofficial rating of 100, and Cousin Casey's got the same rating of 100. In fact, Cousin Casey, interestingly enough, is the only colt in this race to have won over the course and distance. So he hasn't got the greatest draw. I'm trying to see with unofficial ratings, Profits are 102, Miss Cool's are 106. That appears to be the highest rated of the unofficial ratings that I have. Ocean Time is a 106 that ran third to Thunderstruck. Imposing is a 104. Bright Green is only a 91, which is actually quite a high rating to have for a maiden winner. Not many horses get that kind of rating. Golden Prospect, in fact, 92. So clearly the handicappers saw something that we thought we saw as well.
Yes.
To answer your question, how I got involved in that.
Yes.
I wasn't exactly looking to acquire horses, but, you know, Mark Curry's a good mate of mine, sat on the Kenilworth board with me for 7 years. We don't always see eye to eye, which is great because we see things differently in the industry. But he's a proper guy, most unbelievable human being who only has the interest of racing at heart. He's one of those guys who, and there are very few people out there, I'm certainly not one of them, but he's one of those guys who you never hear anybody have a bad word to say about him. He's one of the boys, you know. And we'd always spoke about having a horse together, and he's always been a massive supporter of Sean Terry's, as you are aware of. And he called me one day and asked me what I thought of Golden Prospect. I think this was after Chris van Niekerk had, in fact, it was after Chris van Niekerk had turned it up. And I was unbelievably impressed with this horse on debut, because I've always maintained that the hardest race to win on debut is a 1400, because it's not a sprint and it's not a mile. It's an in-between race. It's really difficult to win. And the way this horse settled in running and traveled like a true professional, and the way he you know, put the field to bed with consummate ease, and the way he won, I was really impressed. And Mark said, would he like to try and buy a share? And would I take a share with him? I said, well, whatever share you take, I'll take a share. We only took a small share in the horse, but a small share still costs quite a lot of money. And now we wait and see. I know he was supposed to have had, there were 1 or 2 races that he was going to run in prior to this, and Sean wasn't 100% happy as to where he was at that point in time. He was always going to aim him at this race. And clearly he does think a lot of the horse because he didn't want to geld him at this point in time. So that was a positive from him. But as to what he believes the horse's chances are on Saturday, I have absolutely no idea, because I haven't spoken with him. But he's not the kind of horse from a good draw that I would leave out.
Yeah.
Could he win this? Would I be surprised? Not at all. Would I be surprised if he ran unplaced? No, I wouldn't be surprised either. I really, in all honesty, don't know what to expect from him.
Okay, so that comes from the horse's mouth there. As you heard, Robert, from Robert, this is really, really tough, Neil. I'm looking at it and thinking a number of horses could improve, Neil. There's very well-bred horses here too. They could suddenly pop up and show a glimpse of brilliance. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to ask you a question, because you've been asking Robert and myself the questions. I'm going to send one back to you. What I find interesting is obviously that Paul Peters got Miss Cool in the race, who won the nursery. right? Took on the colts and won the nursery. Now they've gone back to that well again, but I wonder if it was in his mind whether number 9 Maharani in the previous race would be the one to go for the colts race, or whether because Miss Cool has had success over the colts, that he's gone that route again. And maybe Robert can chip in because he's got those notes there. What is Maharani's unofficial rating as opposed to Miss Cool's? How does the handicapper see them unofficially at the moment?
I actually don't know if I've got the ratings. Let me just have a quick squiz here.
You said Miss Cool was a 104, I think you said.
Yeah, I do have the ratings, interestingly enough. Maharani's 111.
111, yeah.
And Sweet Pepper's 115.
Sure.
Okay. 115. And Miss Cool, you said was a 104, I think.
106.
106.
Yeah.
106.
So
Yeah, so Nico, I find it quite interesting there because he obviously didn't want the two fillies to meet.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And the other point is that, as you said, Miss Cool has run against the boys and beaten them. So don't try and fix something that's not broken. Just go the same route and maybe you come up trumps again. I find this extremely difficult. You know, I liked a horse called, on its debut, when a horse called Thunderstone, when it won on debut here in Joburg. I liked everything about him. I thought he really looked like the pot, but I think he's had problems along the way, Neil. And if I'm going to go as far on as that, as I told Robert, I really like Golden Prospect when he came out. I don't know about this Peter Muscat horse, Formagear, you know, the son of Karari. There's plenty. There's so many. Profit, Neil. When you go back to that run in the gold medallion, sure. I mean, surely it's better than that. I mean, it went all over the place, didn't it, to get a run Profit? I'm just saying that
rather not mention that, but yes.
No, I have mentioned.
Yeah, but that's got that. I think that's going to be slightly different. I think with Profit, unlike Bright Green, I think Profit, they might take their chances. Muzzy might try to get a forward posse. I think Robert's 100% right. Bright Green, they'll ride it as it turns out. I think Profit's going to try and use, because he's got good early pace. So I think he'll try and come over.
Well, anyway, all in order for a field race there in race number 6. You're advised to go as wide as possible. Now we come to the big one. We talk about this all the time about we've got our perceptions. Neil works out, as Robert does, I know, but Neil's working out from March, which horses are going to come in well in and what he can take and so forth. I know, Robert, traditionally you've built books going into the race on a number of individuals that if any one of them win, you're a big winner. What did you do this year? Did you start pretty early?
No, I didn't at all, Nick. I don't really worry about those things these days. Obviously, you know, I back a few horses that I think represent value. But let's deal firstly with sticking my neck out with horses that are relatively fancy that I don't like. So I'm putting a target on my forehead to be shot at. I don't like Committee Ding at all. We spoke earlier about horses trying to win in all 3 centres. I'm not trying to be clever after the event, and Ashram's a good mate of mine, but I feared exactly what would happen in Joburg, and in fact told people that at his last start in the Champions Challenge that he's going to be coming up for oxygen the last 200 meters, which is precisely what happened. You know, it's always a recipe for disaster when jockeys want to become trainers as well. And have a hand in looking after horses. That's always been a recipe for disaster in my book. Now carrying 67 kgs more than last year, not for me. I don't like the filly Sparkling Water. If you look at what she's beaten, Forever Mine, Golden Pheasant, Smoking Hot, Holy Warrior, and couldn't get past Asterix last time, while she's a really decent stayer and doesn't know how to run a bad race, I don't see her winning. In fact, if she runs a place, I think it'll be a good run. I don't like Aragosta because Safe Passage beats him every time they meet, and I don't see how he can possibly run in front of him. The other horse that I don't like is Jet Dark. He's always been a better miler. He was given an absolute hiding in the goal challenge, for which Samanga got suitably punished. Whereas I thought that Linebacker had a beautiful prep run in that race, and I don't see why Jet Dark should reverse with Linebacker, apart from which it's very hard to go for horses that you know are going to come from stone last in a maximum field. And as I alluded to just now, you're going to need more than your fair share of luck. So amongst the fancied horses, those are horses that I don't like. Then we get to my sort of short group of horses. The horse that's got me a bit puzzled here is Hoedspruit, because whereas initially I didn't like him, I do, and Neil made mention of Zapatias earlier on. I do think Zapatias is a massive runner if he stays. That's the unknown. But if you have a look, they met in the Cape, and Hoedspruit beat Zapatias by 3/4 of a length, giving him 4 kgs, and now only has to give Zapatias half a kilo. So I thought, well, if I like Zapatias, Hoedspruit's got to enter the equation. Then if you look at the Met Run, which was a weight for age race, you suddenly see that Hoedspruit is as much as 5 kilos better off with Linebacker for what, round about 4 lengths or so, 3.5 lengths. So, you know, suddenly you can't ignore Hoedspruit, because horses over the years, 4-year-olds that come into the July with these kind of weights, 53, 54 kgs, with decent enough draws, you've got to respect these horses. The negative for me was the last run. I thought he was given, to be polite, a rather comfortable introductory comeback ride to the detriment of punters. I think the jock in the post-race interview made some remark about looking after the horse, and then said, you know, he didn't mean it to come across the way that it did. But quite honestly, and even though he carried 62 kgs that day, he should have been able to dispose of Golden Pheasant in a pinnacle race. So that's my negative with Hoedspruit. But would I be surprised to see Hoedspruit win? No, I wouldn't. Do It Again, I see more as a place horse than winning as a 7-year-old. I know he was impressive in the 1900, but he was handicapped to win that race. Pomp and Power was, when the weights came out initially for the July, was my first choice. I've now got him down as my 4th pick, maybe even my 5th pick. It's between him and Hoedspruit as far as that's concerned. Mainly just because of his manners.
Yeah.
I know they've done a lot of work at home. They come in with compression masks and all sorts of things. And the Snaiths are ecstatic about the draw because they say they'll have horses around him. But it's not horses around you that is going to dictate whether the horse settles or not. It's the pace of the race. And the problem is, where's the pace in the race? Now, you would assume that Asterix is going to go to the front from a 17 draw because that's how he won last time. But how fast is he actually going to go?
No.
Is he going to come across and then slow it up? And what else is going to go? I couldn't find anything else. I thought maybe Flying Carpet drawn outside might try and follow him through, because he's not going to be able to come from behind the better horses in the race. Most of the best horses in this race need to be given a chance. So I'm not sure what else there is. I heard Mike in the post-race interview after the Daily News say that he wanted Aragosta to go to the front in that race, but he couldn't get there. Now, they didn't really go that fast. So from a one gate, is he going to get there or not? I don't know. Now, Pomp and Power in that race pulled so hard. It was an unbelievable run that he managed to even run second. He should have fallen in a hole halfway up the straight, and he didn't, which is testimony to the horse. But it does worry me, and big time, in regard to whether he's going to settle or not. If he does settle, he can certainly win, definitely. But I'm not convinced that he will. Zapatias, I think, is a really, really decent horse. You know, he's running the Guineas behind Double Superlative. He was about a length and a half behind Pomp and Power in that race, and he's double that horse's odds. And the way that he won the KZN Guineas, you know, he only got there the last jump. So he gave me the impression, and certainly as a master of my fate, the negative being out of a Magok mare, that he does have a possibility of staying this race. I heard Brett make mention of the fact that he thinks this is his best chance of ever winning the July, which is quite interesting if you consider he once had the highly fancied Edict of Nantes that ran in the July and finished third. So he's obviously quietly fancied, and I think he represents really decent value at 20-1 for an each-way bet. My second choice in the race is Linebacker. I don't see him missing the top 4. He's a horse who really doesn't know how to run a bad race. His career record is indicative of that. His prep run back was superb. His last run, he's had in 2 beautiful prep runs. In fact, I know the one was unplaced, but you know, it was a comfortable introductory race, and then last time out was a cracking run. And he's got every chance in the race. But at the end of the day, the horse that has to be the horse to beat must be Safe Passage. You know, Mike has stated openly that this horse has thrown up amazing heart scores at home. Made mention of the fact that maximum he was 80% ready in the daily use. The horse actually blew off the boards that day because it was common knowledge that the horse was supposedly going to need the run. He's just got everything in his favor. He's an improving horse. Every time they've asked him to step up again, he's done so. I don't think it hurts that it's owned by Drakenstein, because the kind of form they're in, and every race that winning is quite astounding. And to me, he's clearly the horse to beat. So in summary, my selection is Safe Passage to win from Linebacker, Zapatias, and then a toss-up between Pomp and Power and Hoodspray.
Well, Neil, I can't add to that. So that's very comprehensively put, and you know, made a case for it as he sees it. I saw you nodding when certain horses were mentioned.
Well,
so obviously, you've got the same ideas.
Not altogether, but I was nodding because I've written here a couple of things I had to make a note. First of all, point 1 about creating books for the July. Yeah, I do that. I try to do that with the Summer Cup, which I did very successfully with Flying Carpet. People know about that. But I have to doff my cap to Robert, because he was the guy that got me involved with that. And of course, we had huge success. The one met with Mark Anthony. And so he was really the guy that got me thinking about that, you know, get ahead of a race, get your think about, and I think about this when the Met is run, I'm thinking of the July. That's why I like Hoodspray, because outside of I think the top 6 can be punished, Robert, but beyond that, the handicapper can't get to them. I think that's the story there. So some of those horses come out and already, and that's why I backed the Conglomerate a couple of years ago, because I think he ran 6th or 7th in the Met. And I said to Joey Ramsden at the time, I said, if you look after this horse, he's a certainty to win the July. And as it turned out, he lost a little bit of form and drifted in the market, but he still won. Anyway, so that's the history. I find listening to Robert absolutely fascinating. And this is what makes horse racing such a wonderful sport, because it's a brain game. And we're not always right, but the way Robert eloquently puts forward his arguments are just fascinating to listen to. Point 3, the 4-letter word, and Robert mentioned it, pace. Finally, Robert, I was talking to a good friend of yours. I know you get on very well with Jason Zogby today, and I was with Jason at soccershop.bet. We had a long chat, and I kept saying to him, where is the pace in the race? What Robert said, I see exactly the same. Asterix is not the quickest animal anyway. He will try and get to the front, but he's got to come over from a 17 draw. If he manages to get to the lead, he's going to do an occult. He's not going to carry on going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. He's going to try and settle and set his own pace. It's potential that the rest of the field are stacked up behind him, and that's not going to suit the Jet Darks of this world. It's not going to suit Do It Agains and horses that like to come from the back. So I think the pace of the race is interesting. That's an argument all in its own. The fourth thing is, I have to confess, I got the comedy ding thing wrong. And I tell you where I got it wrong, Robert. I said, look, he's going to go to Joburg. He's going to forego his chance of defending his title because he's going to go to Joburg. So I didn't believe he could do both things, but I thought he'd go to Joburg and win because I thought he was that good. And I don't think, for whatever reason, the comedy ding we saw in Joburg is not the comedy ding of what he's capable of, for whatever reason. And it's gone horribly pear-shaped. And for that reason, I think you're right. It's now that, you're playing up with lost ground. But I did think he'd win the 2 races up here in Joburg. And I was bitterly disappointed at both his performances. And the last thing I want to say about, so here's my book. You spoke about what book I backed. I've backed 4 horses. I started backing Hoedspruit. I wouldn't back it now.
That are left in the race. What about the ones that have exited?
No, I'm telling you what I backed. I'll be brutally honest. So Hoedspruit, which got in the race. My second horse that I started backing was Marina. I thought that she would get a run. She doesn't deserve to get a run. She's gone disappointing, but for whatever reason, I had a lot to come on Marina. She didn't get in the race, and justly so. I mean, she ran last week. So any chance of her getting in went out the door. Then as I mentioned to you, I mentioned the Brett Crawford story, and I phoned Brett. I said, I think Zapatalis can win the July, and so I backed that. And then I came to the party with Robert with Pomp and Power. And Pomp and Power was my strong selection, but I'm with Robert now. I can't, and Greg Bortz actually sent me a message, said, Neil, stay the course. Don't get deflated now. But I look at it and like Robert, I can't see how he's going to turn over the Daily News form with Safe Passage, bearing in mind that he's still going to go out hand, he's going to pull, and Safe Passage probably has 20% improvement to come. So that's the way I think. The only thing about Hoedspruit, Robert, I wanted to ask you, that Hoedspruit for me is the best handicap, as Dunford was, as Power King was, these horses that you talk about, as Hunting Tower was. But I just wonder, as a physical specimen, Robert, whether Gravel will suit Hoedspruit. He's a big, strong individual. I don't know whether he's as good as Power Kings and Hunting Towers, and whether physically Gravel will suit him. That would be my worry.
Neil, I'm not sure that's going to be too much of an issue. If you have a look, you'll see that he didn't have an issue running at Fairview. Now, I know Fairview is a much different course, but sometimes you find that these horses that go to PE and that don't adapt to the tracks there, don't adapt to the tracks at Durban. I understand that Fairview's a galloping track and Gravel isn't, and maybe it's an anomaly, but it's just how it sort of works out. My point being that he adapted to Fairview, no problem. So I don't really see that as an issue. I just have a few question marks about whether he really has the class to win this. 3 runs ago, he beat Super Silvano that you like by half a length, and I'm not big on Super Silvano. And as I say, he really should have won that Pinnacle race. But bearing in mind, had he won that Pinnacle race, he may well have picked up a penalty. I can't remember how he was handicapped in that race, whether he was handicapped to win or not. But certainly what you've said, if you think about the 4-year-olds, and as you said, Dunford, the way he came into the July and a good draw and what have you, he is a hell of a good, well-handicapped horse in this race. It's got, ideal age, ideal draw, ideal weight. It's got everything going for him from that perspective. But is he good enough? That's the element of doubt that I have.
Yeah, well, but you are right. And I don't think he is good enough, actually. I'm talking myself out of the bet that I'm at. I don't think he's good enough. I'm hoping I'm wrong. But again, on pure handicapping, you're right. You look at the Met and the turnover of weights with Linebacker and Zapataz, he's got to be a runner if things go well for him.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to leave that race there. Thanks so much, Robert, for going into it. And thanks, Neil, for completing that. Look, I'm in trouble if Robert's right. I'm in big trouble because there's a couple of names mentioned there that he's put a big red cross through. But I'll reserve my judgment for Saturday. I won't steal Robert's limelight at all because this is his show. I do agree with you on Safe Passage, though. I think Safe Passage is probably the right horse come the end of the day. Neil knows that I like this horse so much for the Daily News. I wasn't put off by the fact that Pomp and Power was short in the betting. And then I, for my sins, made a call on the day of our lunch, Neil, with Mr. Verners, that we had lunch with him, to phone Mike de Kock and find out what he thought of that weekend. And he told me whatever he told everyone else, and it drifted, and I didn't have a cent on, and the rest is history. We still
Nico, spit it out. Tell the whole world you like sparkling water. Come on, tell everybody.
It's one of them. It is one of them, and the other.
You've dissed all his horses.
And the other one's another one that you said can't win. So I'm going to leave it there. Can we go on and just
Robert,
agree?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Nico and Robert, sorry, I don't want to derail you, but what's going to happen here is, right, because I'm going to be plunged into stage 6 darkness. So I think I'm going to leave you guys for the last segment. But before we leave the July, I just want a quick comment from Robert on a couple, because some people will be saying, yeah, but what does Robert think of Al Matana, for example? Robert, what do you think of Al Matana? Will he stay?
Oh, I think he's up against it with that weight and with a massive question mark over the trip. I'm not convinced he's going to stay, Neil.
Okay. Can Belgarian roll back the years, or no chance?
Let me think about it. No.
Okay. And there's one other, those other horses. There was one. Oh, well, you did touch on Do It Again, so I don't think we have to go down.
I wanted to ask you, what about Waterbury Lane, Robert?
I think Waterbury Lane's a really nice horse, and you know, he's a decent horse and above average, but I just think he's a length or 2 or 3 off the best. You know, I just don't see him winning.
Yeah, I don't see him winning either, but I tell you what, he might get the run of the race from a 7 draw if he goes up handy. Last time he was dropped out. I don't know what the plan is, whether they'll drop him out again from a 7 draw, but he did. I mean, he came from last in the Daily News. If you know, and the other thing is about this race, we can all pontificate and look up and see how it's going to pan out. But when those gates open, Robert, as we know, it's mayhem. I mean, and you got to get lucky.
Spot on, Neil.
Yeah.
I think, Nico, that's it. Yeah, I think he's discussed everybody. I just wanted to, just because there'll be some people out there who like certain horses, and I think we've touched on everything. He mentioned that, yeah. So we've pretty much touched on the whole field.
We're going to end of the segment with the Garden Province, which is race 8. I think we can sneak this one in. We've only got 5 minutes of show left, but I saw that gallop of Captain's Ransom on July Gallop's morning, and I was wowed by it. I was certainly overcome with the fact of how well she looks and how things are going with her. Robert, is she a banker as well?
I'd certainly think from an exotic perspective, she's a banker. From an odds perspective, I think odds of 7 to 20 is crazy. I think she'll trade at least 5 to 10. No one's going to take doubles at that price. People will banker her in the exotics. But what is interesting to consider, and I'm not trying to put a damper on her chances, because really and truly she should win, is the fact that the last time she didn't win was in this race last year, when she actually ran unplaced. Zarina won this race, and post that run, she has won 5 on the trot, including 3 consecutive Group 1s in her last 3 starts. Now, did she just have an off day that day, or is there something more sinister in regard to the fact that this was the same race where she bombed last year? I think she's won, what, 7? How many Group 1s has she won? She won 5 or 7. I can't even recall off the top of my head. I think she's won 7.
I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I see 6 here.
I think she's won 7, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, the fact of the matter is she's a kind of filly. It's amazing to actually watch her, because she always hits a flat spot halfway up the straight where she looks like she's in serious trouble, and then she amazingly finds another gear. So, you know, all things being equal, I'm not going to look to get her beaten. My second pick would be Under Your Spell, and then Zarina, and then She's a Keeper. She certainly should win, but I think that the current odds are far too short. You should get much better.
Neil, for our sins, we went for Chansonnet. Can't see that, Neil. Yeah, for our sins, we went for Chansonnet to beat her on Met Day, and we paid the price because she really ran a ripper of a race on Met Day. Are you trying to beat her again?
No, I've learned my lesson. Listen, we're a bit unlucky with Chansonnet, perhaps, but she's brilliant. I wanted to say to Robert, yeah, she's a bit like Pocket Power. Pocket Power was the same, wasn't he? He used to hit that flat spot, but he used to find a way to win. I think it's the same. What I was trying to show you was this here. These are my numbers for the race, which you will see. Why can't I show? Oh, because I've got my fingers over them. So there they are. Robert said he liked 8 from 3 and then 1 and 4. That's how I've gone. 8, 3, 1, 4. Exactly the same. I think she'll have to run below best, but she did last time. The thing is, the last time she was drawn 13 out of 14. It's not as big a field. She's still drawn relatively poorly. She's drawn 8 out of 10, but I don't think it'll stop her this year.
Yeah. You don't want to go for Marina here?
God will get you for that.
If you were to go for it for the July, surely you would go for it, yeah? No?
Yeah, I was going for it based on its Met run, not on the subsequent 4 appalling performances. No, she's
Neil,
not the same Marina that she was.
Are you not going to even try and join us for the next one, and then we'll see the light go out?
No, because it's going to be ridiculous. I'm going to get plunged into darkness.
Okay, so Neil's going to take.
And I mean, we're in very good hands. We're in the best hands of all. I mean, you're through the ringer.
Yeah, absolutely. We're through the ringer. We're through part 2. We're going into part 3, which will be our last look at it. It'll just be the 2 of us. Thank you so much, Neil, for coming on board. Thanks, Robert. We'll join you for that last part shortly.